Singles Awareness Day.
So I have spent most of my life as a single person. What's that, Scott? And I'm mostly okay with that. And those of you who are coupled, I think you're mostly okay with your situation. It's sort of Valentine's Eve time of year, right? And that's really a couples thing, isn't it? And I have had some nice Valentine's Day where I've been part of a couple and gone to a fancy restaurant and had a fantastic meal, and really enjoyed myself, and I've been loved by some great men, and I don't know if I've actually really fallen in love, but I've loved some nice men. But Valentine's Day is a tough one sometimes for single people, and I've had some good Valentine's Days, I've mentioned, even when as a single person, but I've had some clunker Valentine's Days as a single person. And there was one that was particularly bad. It was a Valentine's Day about 20 years ago, and Valentine's Day fell on a Saturday night. And technically, it wasn't the Valentine's Day that was so bad. I made the very big mistake of making plans for brunch the next day. And the East Coast Grill was at its height, and I arrived early, which was a mistake, and I learned not to be early since that day, since that February 16th. So I got there early. I knew the waitstaff pretty well. I sat at the bar waiting for my friends to arrive, and I was chatting with the waitstaff whom I knew pretty well, and I was observing the room, as one does when they're early and waiting for their friends. And I looked around. Dan referred to maybe a marijuana fog that was in his story. There was a post-coital fog at the East Coast Grill on the Sunday after St. Valentine's Day. Every person that came into that restaurant had just rolled out of bed, and they had bedhead, and they were just, why would they have jumped out of bed? They could, if they take a shower, they could spend another 20 minutes with the person that they had been making love to all night, like another session in before their brunch plans. And so the room even had that sort of truffly odor to it. You know what I'm talking about? Why we love truffles so much? And the times they were looking into each other's eyes, dreamily thinking about that great, thoughtful gift, or that awkward proclamation that they made, and they were refueling on bacon and eggs so they could get back into bed again. And I knew it. So my friends arrived, and we had a great brunch. And maybe you remember the Make Your Own Bloody Mary brunch? I love that thing to work. I thought that some Bloody Marys and waffles would help. It didn't. This one really, it stained my psyche and my heart. It really stained me, and I couldn't buff it out. I had that endless loop. Something's wrong with you. You don't know how to love. You're so deeply flawed. I think everybody has, and it doesn't happen to me very often, but for a couple weeks after that horrible brunch at the East Coast Grill, which by the way was not the East Coast Grill's fault, I said never again. I'm never going to let that happen to me ever again. And that year I actually was dating somebody. It didn't work out. He went to his high school reunion and met his high school sweetheart, and they're happily married with kids. So Valentine's Day, the harbingers started to show up. Almost a year later, the hearts, the send red roses on NPR to raise money. They'll arrive in time if you get them in by Tuesday. And the foundations department at Fleens had all kinds of sexy lingerie, and it was not to be ignored. Valentine's Day was going to come, and I wasn't going to let it happen to me again. I wasn't certainly going to brunch, but I decided that I was going to celebrate Valentine's Day, even though I was single. So I found all my close single friends, and I decided I'm going to cook dinner for them. I'm going to celebrate love in a different way. So I made this great meal, or planned this great meal, and I decorated my house. I got red and pink and white construction paper and printed paper, and I made little hearts and big hearts, and I tied white string and I stuck them to the ceiling with Scotch tape so that when you walked through the long foyer of that apartment, you had to go through this tunnel of hanging hearts. And by the way, when I moved out of that apartment, that Scotch tape is still. It's really hard to get the Scotch tape out. Anyway, but there were candles in the foyer, and then you came in, and I had the dining room table. I found at TJ Maxx a white with red polka dot bed sheet, and I ironed it, put it on, that was the tablecloth, and there were flowers and more candles. The dinner, I had oysters with a beautiful mignonette sauce and lots of, nibbly things. Laurent Perrier rosé champagne was not the ridiculous price that it is now, so that was poured that. I made a special cocktail called the SAD. Yep, that's the acronym for Singles Awareness Day. Remember when the Canton ginger liqueur first came in? It had pomegranate and ginger liqueur, ginger simple syrup, and some cranberry juice. It was great. The entree, I went kind of old school. Ribeyes, caramelized onions. I thinly sliced the onions and low and slow on those onions. They were delicious. I made roasted potatoes, crunchy, beautifully crispy on one side, got the Gruyere cheese and got the next layer of potatoes, crunchy on the second side, roasted wild mushrooms, truffle oil, the real stuff, not that petroleum poured, and it smells like truffle for about a minute, and then an hour later, but no, this was the real stuff, the expensive stuff. The steaks may or may not have been overcooked because the SAD cocktail I was telling you about. It wasn't so much that I was drinking them during, but to get the proportions right before it gets right, I did, on an empty stomach, have a few too many SADs. So steaks, some were, most were overcooked, but that was forgiven. But I cooked a meal for my friends whom I love. I made red velvet cake cupcakes for dessert. Learned a few things about red velvet cake and cupcakes. One, I don't like red velvet cake. It's gross. Because to make the bread, you have to put the fruit into stuff. And I don't like cupcakes. But I did make the beautiful cupcakes with the buttercream and heart, red, white, and pink heart-shaped sprinkles on top of them. And it was a beautiful meal. And I kept up this for a few years. We did this Singles Awareness Day, the SAD. And as Louisa told you, I started traveling a lot, and people got married or they moved away, and it was harder and harder to carry on the tradition. But what I did learn about that is that the act of buying food and planning a meal and cooking and serving people you care about is a very nurturing and loving thing to do. And it can be amorous, it can be platonic, it can be maternal, it can be brotherly or sisterly. But it's a gift that I was able to give to myself and to my friends. And I know that I know how to love, and I know that I am loved. And I also know that I know how to cook. And Singles Awareness Day does come out as sad, but there's nothing sad about being single. So, thank you. Thank you, Louisa.